You know that feeling when someone looks at you like you don't belong? Like you're somehow less than them just because of where you came from or how much money they think you have? Well, let me tell you about the day I turned that feeling into the sweetest revenge of my entire life. And trust me, by the end of this story, you're going to understand why sometimes the best response to being underestimated is to completely blow their minds. My name is Sarah, and if you're someone who's ever felt overlooked or dismissed because of your background, I think you're going to love what I'm about to share. Before we dive in, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button because I share real stories about overcoming life's challenges, and I have a feeling you and I are going to be great friends on this journey together. This whole thing started about 18 months ago, during what was supposed to be the happiest time of my life. My younger sister Emma was getting married to her college sweetheart Jake, and I was genuinely excited for her. Emma and I had always been close, despite being complete opposites in almost every way. She was the social butterfly, the one who effortlessly made friends and always knew the right thing to say. I was the quiet one, the one who buried herself in books and later in building my business from scratch. Now, here's where I need to give you some context about my family dynamics, because it's crucial to understanding what happened next. Emma had married into what you might call old money. Jake's family, the Hendersons, owned a chain of luxury resorts across the Southwest, and they had this way of making sure everyone knew exactly where they stood on the social ladder. Jake himself was actually pretty decent, but his mother, Patricia, was something else entirely. She had this talent for making backhanded compliments feel like genuine kindness, and she'd perfected the art of making you feel small while maintaining plausible deniability. The wedding had been beautiful, held at one of their resort properties in Scottsdale, and I'd watched my sister glow with happiness as she said her vows. But even then, I could feel the subtle undercurrents. The way Patricia would introduce me as Emma's older sister who runs a little business, or how she'd steer conversations away from me whenever I tried to contribute. It wasn't outright rude, but it was clear that in her world, I was Emma's less successful, less polished sibling. For Emma's sake, I kept my mouth shut and played nice. After all, this was her new family, and I wanted her to be happy. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting every single time. Fast forward to last spring, and Emma calls me with news that initially made my heart soar. She was pregnant with her first child, and the family was planning a massive celebration. Not just any celebration, mind you, but a week-long extravaganza at an exclusive villa in Tuscany that the Hendersons had rented for the occasion. Emma was practically vibrating with excitement as she told me about the plans. A beautiful villa in the hills outside of Florence, with vineyards stretching as far as the eye could see, private chefs, and enough space for the entire extended family to celebrate together. "Oh, Sarah, you're going to love it," she gushed over the phone. "The pictures are absolutely stunning. It's like something out of a movie. There's this incredible terrace that overlooks the valley, and the villa has been in the same family for generations. Patricia found it through some exclusive rental agency that only deals with the most amazing properties." I was genuinely happy for her, and I started mentally clearing my schedule for the trip. I'd been working incredibly hard on my business, and a week in Italy sounded like exactly what I needed. Plus, I was going to be an aunt, and I wanted to be there for every moment of celebrating this new chapter in Emma's life. But then came the phone call that changed everything. It was about 3 weeks after Emma had first told me about the trip. I was in my home office, going through quarterly reports from my company, when my phone rang. Emma's name popped up on the screen, but something was different about her voice when I answered. She sounded nervous, almost apologetic. "Hey, Sarah," she said, and I could immediately tell something was wrong. "I need to talk to you about something, and I'm not really sure how to bring this up." My stomach dropped. In my experience, conversations that start like that never go anywhere good. "What's going on, Em?" I asked, setting down my pen and giving her my full attention. There was a long pause, and I could hear her taking a deep breath. "It's about the Italy trip. Patricia called me today, and she said there's been a complication with the villa." "What kind of complication?" Another pause. "Well, apparently the villa is smaller than they originally thought, and with all the family coming, they're running out of space. Patricia wanted me to ask you if you'd be willing to help cover some of the additional costs so they can arrange for you to stay at a nearby hotel instead." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "Wait, what? They want me to pay for my own hotel because there's not enough room for me at the villa? It's not like that, Emma said quickly, but I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. It's just that Patricia said the villa situation is complicated, and she thought maybe you'd prefer having your own space anyway. She said the hotel is really nice, and it's only about 10 minutes away from the villa. I was quiet for a moment, processing what I was hearing. Patricia Henderson, who had probably never worried about money a day in her life, was asking me to pay for my own accommodations because I wasn't important enough to make room for at the family celebration. The message was crystal clear. You're not really family, and if you want to be included, you'll have to pay for the privilege. How much are we talking about, Emma? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She said it would be about $1,500 for the week, including meals and transportation to and from the villa for the events. $1,500 for the privilege of being excluded from the family gathering while still being expected to participate and contribute. It was ingenious, really. Patricia had found a way to make me feel unwelcome while simultaneously making it look like she was doing me a favor. And everyone else is staying at the villa? I asked. Well, yes, but Sarah, you have to understand, Patricia is really stressed about the logistics, and she's trying to make sure everyone is comfortable. Everyone except me, apparently. Here's the thing about moments like these. You have a choice. You can swallow your pride, accept the slight, and go along with it to keep the peace. Or you can decide that you've had enough of being treated like a second-class citizen. In that moment, sitting in my office with Emma's apologetic voice in my ear, I made a decision that would change everything. You know what, Em? Tell Patricia not to worry about it. I'll handle my own arrangements. Really? Oh, Sarah, thank you so much. I knew you'd understand. Patricia is going to be so relieved. I'm sure she was. After I hung up with Emma, I sat in my office for a long time, staring out the window at the city skyline. I was angry, sure, but more than that, I was disappointed. Disappointed that my sister couldn't see what was happening. Disappointed that I was being treated this way, and disappointed that I'd let it go on for so long. But then something else started to creep in. A kind of cold, calculated determination that I hadn't felt in years. See, what Patricia Henderson didn't know about me was that my little business wasn't so little anymore. I'd started a tech consulting company about 7 years earlier, right after I'd graduated from MIT with a degree in computer science. What had begun as me helping small businesses optimize their digital infrastructure had grown into something much bigger. I'd developed a proprietary software platform that helped companies streamline their operations, and in the past 3 years, we'd landed contracts with some major corporations. I'm talking Fortune 500 companies who paid us millions of dollars to overhaul their entire digital ecosystems. My company now employed over 50 people, and our revenue last year had hit 8 figures. But here's the thing about me. I've never been flashy about my success. I don't drive fancy cars or wear designer clothes. I live in a nice but modest house, and I prefer to let my work speak for itself. I think it comes from growing up in a family where money was always tight, and my parents taught me to value substance over style. So when Patricia Henderson looked at me, she saw someone who drove a Honda Civic and shopped at Target. She had no idea that I was probably worth more than her entire family combined. And that's when I got an idea that made me smile for the first time since Emma's phone call. I opened my laptop and started researching. If Patricia thought I wasn't good enough to stay at their precious rented villa, then maybe I didn't need to stay at their villa at all. Maybe I could find my own place in Tuscany. Something nice. Something that would make a statement. It took me about 4 hours of research and a dozen phone calls to various real estate agencies in Italy. But I finally found what I was looking for. Not a rental, not a hotel, but a villa that was actually for sale. The Villa Monterosa was even more stunning than the place the Hendersons had rented. Built in the 16th century, it sat on 37 acres of Tuscan countryside, complete with its own vineyard, olive groves, and a view that would make you believe in God. The villa itself had 12 bedrooms, each with its own bathroom, a massive kitchen that could accommodate a restaurant, and grounds that looked like they'd been designed by angels. And it was for sale for 4.2 million euros. I stared at the listing photos for a long time, imagining Patricia Henderson's face when she realized what had happened. Then I picked up my phone and called my accountant. "Frank, it's Sarah. I need to move some money around. How quickly can we liquidate about $5 million from my investment portfolio? Sarah, what's going on? That's a significant amount of money to move quickly. Let's just say I'm making a point. How fast can you make it happen? If it's urgent, I can have it done within 48 hours. But Sarah, please tell me you're not making any rash decisions. Frank, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Make the transfers. The next step was contacting the real estate agency in Italy. Because of the time difference, I had to wait until early the next morning to make the call. But when I did, I spoke to a woman named Giulia who specialized in luxury property sales. Signorina, the Villa Monterosa is a very special property, she said, in beautifully accented English. But I must tell you, the owners are hoping to close the sale very quickly. They have relocated to Rome, and they would prefer not to wait months for the typical buying process. That's perfect, I told her. I'm prepared to make a cash offer today, full asking price, with the ability to close within 2 weeks. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I'm sorry, did you say cash offer? For the full amount? That's correct. I'll have my attorneys draw up the paperwork today. The only condition is that I need to be able to take possession of the property by the 3rd week of July. Signorina, may I ask what you plan to do with the property? Are you planning to live there permanently? I smiled. Let's just say I'm planning to host a very special family gathering. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of paperwork, international wire transfers, and legal documents. My lawyers worked around the clock to ensure everything was done properly, and somehow, miraculously, we managed to close on the property in 13 days. On a Thursday morning in July, I received the email I'd been waiting for. The Villa Monterosa was officially mine, but I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The next phase of my plan required some serious logistics. I contacted a luxury concierge service in Florence and explained what I needed. I wanted the villa to be fully staffed for a week-long celebration. I wanted a world-class chef, a full housekeeping team, grounds maintenance, and a sommelier who could give tours of my new vineyard. I wanted every detail to be absolutely perfect. Signora, the concierge asked, how many guests are you expecting? Let's plan for about 25 people, I said. And I want it to be an experience they'll never forget. Of course. And may I ask the nature of the celebration? It's a family reunion, I said. A very special family reunion. The final piece of the puzzle was the hardest part. I had to call Emma and tell her there had been a change of plans without revealing what I'd done. I decided to keep it simple. Em, I need to let you know that I won't be staying at the hotel after all. I found alternative accommodations, and I think it's going to work out much better for everyone. Oh, that's great. Patricia will be so relieved. Where are you staying? I found a place not too far from where you'll be. Don't worry about me at all. I'll be perfectly comfortable. Are you sure? I feel terrible about this whole situation. Emma, trust me. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I'll see you in Italy. The day finally arrived. I flew first class to Rome, then took a private car service to Tuscany. As we wound through the hills toward my new property, I felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness that I hadn't experienced since I'd started my business. This was either going to be the most satisfying moment of my life or a very expensive mistake. The Villa Monterosa was even more breathtaking in person than it had been in the photos. The ancient stone walls seemed to glow in the late afternoon sun, and the gardens were so perfectly manicured they looked like something out of a fairy tale. My staff was already there, putting the finishing touches on preparations for the week ahead. Maria, the head housekeeper, greeted me at the door. Signora Sara, welcome to your home. Everything is ready for your guests. My home. I liked the sound of that. That evening, I sat on the terrace with a glass of wine from my own vineyard, looking out over the valley as the sun set behind the hills. Tomorrow, the Henderson family would arrive at their rented villa, and the real fun would begin. I didn't have to wait long for the first reaction. My phone rang around 10 o'clock the next morning. It was Emma, and she sounded confused. Sarah, the strangest thing just happened. Patricia was talking to the concierge at our villa, and she mentioned that there's another American family staying at the Villa Monterosa this week. She said they heard there was some kind of celebration happening there too. Oh, really? That's interesting. Yeah, and get this. The concierge said whoever is staying there bought the entire villa. Can you imagine? Who has that kind of money? I took a sip of my morning espresso and smiled. I can't imagine, Em. That's crazy. I know, right? Patricia is all worked up about it. She keeps saying she hopes they don't interfere with our plans or make too much noise. She's worried about the noise carrying across the valley. Well, I'm sure whoever it is will be respectful of other guests in the area. I hope so. Anyway, I can't wait to see you. Are you settled in at your hotel? I'm very comfortable, Emma. Very comfortable indeed. The first real test came that evening. I knew the Henderson family was planning to have their welcome dinner on the terrace of their rented villa, and I'd positioned myself strategically on my own terrace with a pair of binoculars. The properties were close enough that I could see their villa clearly, and more importantly, they could see mine. At around 7 o'clock, I watched as the Henderson family gathered on their terrace. I could see Patricia directing the staff, arranging seating, making sure everything was perfect for their first evening in Tuscany. Jake and Emma were there, along with what looked like about 15 other family members. That's when I put my plan into motion. I'd arranged for a string quartet to perform on my terrace during dinner, and I'd asked my chef to prepare a feast that would be visible from across the valley. As the sun began to set, the music started floating across the hills, and I watched as the Henderson family began to take notice. Through my binoculars, I could see Patricia pointing toward my villa, clearly asking questions about the music. I saw her talking animatedly to someone who looked like their concierge, probably demanding to know what was going on at the property next door. But the real moment came when my staff began lighting the grounds. I'd had professional lighting installed throughout the gardens, and when it came on, the entire Villa Monterosa began to glow like something out of a movie. The effect was stunning, and I could see that everyone at the Henderson Villa had stopped what they were doing to stare. My phone rang within minutes. "Sarah, you're not going to believe this. The people at the villa next to us are having some kind of massive party. There's live music and these incredible lights, and Patricia is absolutely livid. She's convinced they're doing it on purpose to upstage our celebration." "That does sound inconsiderate," I said, trying to keep the laughter out of my voice. "Patricia is talking about filing a complaint with the rental agency. She says this is exactly the kind of thing that ruins a family celebration." Well, maybe they're just celebrating something special too. Maybe. But Patricia thinks they're being deliberately obnoxious. She keeps saying that new money has no class. New money, if only she knew. The next morning, I decided it was time to make my presence known. I got dressed in a simple but elegant outfit and drove to the local village where I knew the Henderson family would be shopping for souvenirs and exploring the local market. I timed my arrival perfectly. As I walked through the cobblestone streets, I spotted Emma and Jake browsing at a local pottery shop. Patricia was nearby, examining some handmade scarves with the kind of critical eye that suggested she was finding fault with everything. I took a deep breath and walked up to them. "Emma, what a surprise!" Emma turned around, and her face lit up with genuine happiness. "Sarah, oh my gosh, what are you doing here?" "I was just exploring the village. My accommodations are nearby, and I thought I'd check out the local shops." Jake gave me a warm hug. "It's so good to see you, Sarah. How are you liking Italy?" "It's absolutely beautiful. I can't believe Emma didn't tell me how stunning this area is." Patricia had approached our little group, and I could see her trying to figure out how to insert herself into the conversation. "Sarah, dear, how lovely to see you. How is your little hotel?" "Oh, I'm not staying at a hotel," I said casually. "I found a villa to rent. It's working out wonderfully." "A villa?" Patricia's eyebrows shot up. "How nice. Which one?" "The Villa Monterosa. It's just a few minutes from here." The silence that followed was deafening. I watched as Patricia's face went through a series of expressions, from confusion to disbelief to something that looked like horror. "The Villa Monterosa?" she said slowly. "Are you telling me that you're the one who's been what?" I asked innocently. "The music, the lights, the celebration. That's you? Oh, did you hear the music last night? I hope it wasn't too loud. I had a string quartet perform during dinner. They were absolutely lovely." Emma was looking back and forth between Patricia and me, clearly confused. "Wait, Sarah, you're staying at the villa next to us? The one with all the lights?" "That's right. What a coincidence, isn't it?" Patricia was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. "How did you manage to rent the Villa Monterosa? Do you have any idea how exclusive that property is? I'm sure it's very nice, I said. I'm quite comfortable there. But the cost, Patricia sputtered. A property like that must rent for thousands of dollars a night. Oh, I'm not renting it, I said. And this is where I delivered the line I'd been rehearsing for weeks. I bought it. The silence that followed was so complete that I could hear birds chirping in the distance. Emma's mouth was hanging open. Jake looked like he'd been frozen in place, and Patricia's face had turned an interesting shade of red. You bought it? Emma finally managed to say. That's right. I decided I needed a vacation home, and when I saw the Villa Monterosa, I just fell in love with it. The timing worked out perfectly for your celebration. Patricia found her voice first. That's impossible. The Villa Monterosa is worth millions of dollars. 4.2 million euros to be exact, I said cheerfully, plus renovation costs, but it's been worth every penny. But you can't, your business. Patricia was struggling to form complete sentences. My business is doing very well, thank you for asking. Actually, Patricia, I should probably thank you. If you hadn't suggested that I find alternative accommodations, I never would have discovered this amazing property. Emma was still staring at me in shock. Sarah, are you telling me you bought a $4 million villa because Patricia asked you to stay in a hotel? Well, when you put it like that, it sounds a bit dramatic, I said. But I prefer to think of it as a sound investment. The Tuscan real estate market is very strong right now. Jake finally spoke up. Sarah, this is incredible. I had no idea your business was doing so well. I don't like to brag, I said, glancing at Patricia, who was still trying to process what she'd just heard. But yes, things have been going quite well for my little company. Patricia's face was cycling through emotions like a slot machine. Your little company? She said weakly. Oh, I'm sorry, Patricia. I should have been more specific. My company, TechFlow Solutions, provides digital infrastructure consulting to Fortune 500 companies. We did about $30 million in revenue last year. I watched as Patricia's knees seemed to give out slightly. She reached for Jake's arm to steady herself. $30 million? Emma whispered. That's just revenue, I said. Profit margins in tech consulting are quite healthy. The conversation that followed was surreal. Patricia, who had spent 2 years treating me like Emma's poor relation, was suddenly trying to backtrack and make it seem like the whole hotel situation had been a misunderstanding. Emma was asking a million questions about my business, and Jake was apologizing for not realizing how successful I'd become. But the best part was still to come. Sarah, Patricia said, and I could hear her trying to regain her composure. I hope you'll join us for dinner tonight. I'm sure we can make room at our table. Oh, that's so kind of you to offer, I said. But I was actually hoping you might all join me for dinner instead. I have this beautiful terrace that overlooks the valley, and my chef is preparing something special. Your chef? Patricia asked faintly. Oh yes, I hired a full staff for the week. There's the chef, of course, and a sommelier who gives wonderful tours of the vineyard. The groundskeeper has been teaching me about olive oil production. It's been fascinating. You have a vineyard? Emma asked. Well, it came with the property. About 12 acres of Sangiovese grapes. The wine is actually quite good. I extended the invitation to the entire Henderson family, and by that evening, they were all gathered on my terrace, being served a 7-course meal by my private chef while a different quartet played softly in the background. The transformation in Patricia's behavior was remarkable. Suddenly, I wasn't Emma's less successful older sister. I was a successful entrepreneur who owned a magnificent villa in Tuscany. She was asking thoughtful questions about my business, complimenting my taste in wine, and suggesting that we should stay in touch when we returned to the States. It was almost sad, really, the way she could flip her entire attitude based on nothing more than my net worth. But Emma's reaction was what really mattered to me. As the evening wound down and the other guests began to disperse, she pulled me aside. Sarah, I need to apologize. I should have stood up for you when Patricia suggested the hotel thing. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't want to cause drama. Emma, you don't need to apologize. You're starting a new life with Jake, and you wanted to keep the peace with his family. I understand. But you're my sister. You should have come first. You're going to be a mother soon, I said, pulling her into a hug. Your priorities are exactly where they should be. Besides, everything worked out perfectly. I still can't believe you bought a villa just to make a point. I didn't buy it just to make a point, I said. I bought it because I could, and because I wanted to. The point was just a bonus. We stood there on the terrace, looking out over the valley, and Emma shook her head. Patricia is going to be talking about this for years. Let her talk, I said. I have a feeling she's going to be much more respectful going forward. The rest of the week was absolutely perfect. The Henderson family joined me for several meals, and I made sure each one was more impressive than the last. Patricia was practically fawning over me by the end of the trip, and I have to admit, I enjoyed it more than I should have. But the real victory wasn't in proving Patricia wrong or showing off my wealth. It was in the way Emma started to see me differently. For the first time in our lives, she wasn't looking at me as her quiet, bookish older sister. She was seeing me as someone who had built something impressive, someone who had succeeded on her own terms. On our last night in Italy, I threw a party that the entire valley could hear. I invited everyone I'd met during the week, including the staff from the villa the Hendersons had rented. There was dancing, incredible food, and wine that flowed like water. At one point, I looked around at all the people celebrating on my terrace and realized that this was exactly what I'd wanted. Not the revenge, though that had been satisfying, but the recognition, the acknowledgement that I was worth something, that I belonged. As the evening wound down, Patricia approached me one last time. Sarah, I owe you an apology. I'm afraid I underestimated you, and I'm sorry for that. Patricia, we all make assumptions sometimes. The important thing is that we're family now, and family should support each other. You're absolutely right, and I want you to know that Jake and Emma are lucky to have you in their lives. It was a nice sentiment, though I suspected it would have been different if I'd stayed at that hotel like she'd originally planned. The flight home was bittersweet. I'd fallen in love with the Villa Monterosa, and leaving it felt like leaving a piece of myself behind. But I knew I'd be back. The property was mine now, and I was already making plans for renovations and improvements. Emma and I talked for most of the flight, and she kept asking me about my business and my plans for the future. It was the first time in years that she'd seemed genuinely interested in my life, and I realized how much I'd missed having that connection with her. Sarah, she said as we were landing, can I ask you something? Of course. When you bought the villa, was it really about making a point to Patricia? I thought about it for a moment. Honestly, in the beginning, yes. I was angry and hurt, and I wanted to show her that she couldn't treat me like I was less than her family. But somewhere along the way, it became about more than that. What do you mean? I mean that I've spent so many years being modest about my success, trying not to make other people uncomfortable with what I've accomplished. But there's something to be said for owning your achievements, for not apologizing for doing well. Emma nodded thoughtfully. I think I understand. And Sarah? Yeah? I'm really proud of you. Not just for buying the villa, but for everything you've built. I should have told you that a long time ago. That conversation meant more to me than all the revenge and satisfaction combined. When we got back to the States, word of what had happened in Italy spread through the extended family like wildfire. I suddenly found myself invited to events I'd never been included in before, and people were asking for my advice on business and investments. It was flattering, but also a little hollow. These were the same people who had overlooked me for years, and now they were interested because I'd proven I had money. It made me appreciate the people who had valued me before they knew about my success. But the best outcome of the whole experience was the change in my relationship with Emma. We started talking more regularly, and she began asking for my advice on things beyond just business. When her daughter was born 3 months later, I was one of the first people she called. Sarah, I want you to be Maya's godmother, she said, and I could hear the baby crying in the background. Are you sure? What about Jake's family? I'm sure. Maya is going to need someone in her life who shows her that she can accomplish anything she sets her mind to. Someone who won't let other people's expectations define her. I accepted, of course, and I've taken that responsibility seriously. Maya is 2 years old now, and every time I see her, I'm reminded of why I fought so hard to be recognized as an equal member of this family. As for Patricia Henderson, she's been nothing but gracious to me ever since Italy. She includes me in family gatherings, asks about my business, and has even referred several clients to my company. I think she learned that underestimating people can be an expensive mistake. The Villa Monterosa has become my favorite place in the world. I spend several weeks there each year, and I've started hosting an annual gathering for friends and family. It's become a tradition that people look forward to, and I love being able to share that beautiful place with the people I care about. But more than that, the villa represents something important to me. It's proof that I don't have to accept being treated as less than. It's a reminder that I have the power to change my circumstances, and that sometimes the best response to being excluded is to create your own inclusion. Looking back on the whole experience, I don't regret spending that money for a second. Yes, it was expensive. Yes, it was probably more dramatic than necessary, but it was also liberating in a way I hadn't expected. For the first time in my life, I wasn't apologizing for my success or trying to make myself smaller to make other people comfortable. And that lesson has extended far beyond my relationship with Patricia Henderson. In my business, I've started being more confident in negotiations, more willing to showcase our achievements, and more comfortable with the success we've built. My company has grown even more since Italy, and I attribute part of that growth to the confidence I gained from that experience. The funny thing is, I originally thought this story was about revenge, about showing Patricia Henderson that she couldn't treat me like I was less than her family. But really, it was about something much more important. It was about recognizing my own worth and refusing to accept anything less than the respect I deserved. If there's a lesson in all of this, it's that you should never let other people's limited vision of you become your own reality. Patricia Henderson looked at me and saw someone who wasn't quite good enough for her family. But that said more about her limitations than it did about my worth. I've learned that success isn't just about what you accomplish. It's about how you carry yourself and how you allow others to treat you. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to accept the role that other people have assigned to you. The Villa Monterosa sits on those Tuscan hills today, as beautiful as ever. I'm planning to spend Christmas there this year, and Emma and Jake are bringing Maya for her first trip to Italy. Patricia has hinted that she'd love to visit again, and I'll probably invite her. After all, she played a crucial role in one of the best decisions I've ever made. But every time I look at that villa, I remember the feeling of being told I wasn't good enough to stay with the family. And then I remember the feeling of proving that assumption wrong. Not just to Patricia, but to myself. Because in the end, that's what this story is really about. Not about buying a villa or getting revenge on someone who underestimated me. It's about refusing to accept less than you deserve and having the courage to bet on yourself even when others won't. And if you're someone who's ever felt overlooked or underestimated, I want you to know that you have more power than you think. You don't have to accept other people's limitations as your own reality. You can choose to write your own story, even if it surprises everyone around you. So here's my question for you. Have you ever been in a situation where someone made you feel like you didn't belong? Where you were excluded or treated as less than? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Did you stand up for yourself? Or do you wish you had? And what would you do if you had the chance to rewrite that story today? Share your experiences with me, because I have a feeling that many of you have your own versions of this story. And who knows? Maybe your story will inspire someone else to stand up for themselves the next time they're told they're not good enough. Remember, you don't need to buy a villa in Tuscany to make your point. But you do need to believe that you deserve better than being treated as less than you are. And sometimes, that belief is worth more than any amount of money you could spend.